You know, it's funny, man. You start to, when you start to get into those points of our lives where all those insecurities are formulated, we begin to see that it's over the course of a long time or span or distance. And obviously people are coming to our show because they're in those moments where their insecurities are affecting them. They're feeling judged, or they're judging themselves wrongfully. You know, what I'd like to start out this portion of the Never Quit story, or your stories that you're going to share today with us, is from a quote in your book, and right in the beginning. And we're talking about, you know, your father's roller rink, who was hanging out there, the challenge your mom was facing. And then you say this, and this thing just jumped out at me. It said, maybe if I had been older, or my father had been a good man, I might have had some pride in being part of a cultural moment like that. But young kids aren't about that life. It's almost like no matter who your parents are or what they do, we're all born with a moral compass that's properly tuned. When you're 6, 7, or 8 years old, you know what feels right and what feels way the fuck off. And when you're born into a cyclone of terror and pain, you know it doesn't have to be that way. And the truth nags at you like a splinter in your jacked up mind. You can choose to ignore it, but the dull throbbing is always there as the days and nights bleed together into one blurred memory. Can you start us off on this edition of TNQP with that quote and your greatest never quit stories or story?
Yeah, man. So with that right there meant to me, so that was simply that I was realizing that at this young age, my foundation was completely cracked. And if you read the very beginning of the book, you'll see to the unrelenting voice in my head that wouldn't allow me to stop, pretty much, right?
Yeah.
So what that voice is God. I don't talk about God a lot, but you know, I'm a big believer in God, and people think because I cuss so much that I don't believe in God, which they don't understand. I don't get that mentality with people. If I say fuck or shit, I don't believe in God. I don't get that. But anyway, so that where I'm going at in this whole book is that that voice in my head, everything going around, that voice is very loud when you're a young kid, because the world hasn't gotten a chance to pull you away from that voice.
Yeah.
You know, so it's the loudest when you're young. It's directing you to be a good guy. That's why there's no racism when you're young. There's no bullying when you're real young. You're just kids playing because you know it's not right to be this way to that kid. But as you start to get older, you start to move away from that voice because the world starts to get so noisy and so loud that voice now becomes muffled. And so at this age in my life, that voice is loud and clear and it's telling me this shit is not right. What you're going through is wrong. Your mom being beat, you know, like I talk about, you know, being around Rick James and O.J. Simpson. Like, it would have been great if I was 30 years old, you know, seeing that stuff. But what I'm seeing as a young kid is I'm seeing destruction. So I don't see Rick James and O.J. Simpson, man. I see nothing but destruction in this household, and that destruction is starting to build this new layer on top of me of like, okay, this is what life is. And I can tell it's all wrong. This isn't what life is. But it just kind of swarmed me up and it kind of swallowed me whole. And that became, for a long time, my identity was hurt, pain, insecurity, self-doubt, fear, and every other word you can imagine to make me feel bad about myself.
Wow.
So that comes from
this voice in your head and it being God, because I think this is a huge thing for people, right? If we can anchor our pain in the fact that it's part of our pathway, it's God's great gift to us. And you talk about it in a bunch of different interviews. You know, in one on Joe Rogan's show, your last one, you talk about that voice, and most people's voice is about comfort, and yours was a different kind of voice. At what point did it really start to be quieted, and you didn't know how to build the voice back up? At what age? Was it 11, 12? Or, at what point did you could barely hear God's voice anymore?
You know what's funny, man? I really never got to that point.
Awesome.
I was ignoring it. Because so with my foundation, with the stuttering, with the learning disabilities, with all these insecurities I had from being beaten and everything, I knew I had the ability because his voice was saying, man, you can do all this. I mean, you can be a badass still. We can flip this story upside down. But I didn't have the strength to face the voice, to be like, hey, man, okay, you know what? I can, because I knew that the amount of work I was going to put into developing Goggins. David Goggins was a punk, as I talked about a long time ago with us on the show.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. The strength that it was going to take to develop Goggins, and also, I wanted people to like me. That's all I wanted. When you come from a world of not being liked or loved, or not even know what love is, you want to be loved and liked more than anything in the world.
Yeah. So
you do anything to get that. But that voice was saying, man, you might not be liked and loved when you go this way. And I was like, man, that's all I want. I never had it. So it really just took the courage, because that voice became so daunting and so haunting. It just wouldn't leave me the fuck alone. That it basically made me face myself. And that's what it got louder. It didn't get quieter on me. It just got louder. Like the more I lied, the more I became insecure, the more I cheated in school, the more I cheated in life, the louder that voice got saying, no, man, you are here for a fucking reason, Goggins. And I'm not going to leave you alone until you do this. Until you go this way, I'm going to be in your ear. I'm going to make you feel worse and worse and worse and worse until you do what I put you here to do, which is what I'm doing right now. But without a story, you can change no one's life without a story.
Marcus, and you talk about that all the time with our guests, right? Who talk about this pathway of pain towards, whether it's the enlightenment, whether it's the recognition that there's a better space on the other side, or whatever it is. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Man, no matter how hard you try, how hard you train, and we spend our lives to get out of a situation pretty quick. Right, real fast. And those of us who are drawn into that, you can put a name on it, seals, whatever, back through time, and we all gravitate in a certain direction. It seems like no matter how often we do this or how good we think we get at it, man, you can still get burnt, right? You still get your butt whipped in some kind of capacity, but that's okay. You look at it like, man, now, hey, that was a good one. All right, I wasn't paying attention, but I am now, and I always will be. And that voice in your head is absolutely driving you in a specific direction. And when it becomes clear to you what that is, then the pain becomes the fuel, and the knowledge and the wisdom becomes the reward.
Wow.
David, what is that voice, and how has your relationship to that voice changed over time?
Great question.
God, right?
Well, it's God. Well, for me, it's God. I'm not here to judge anybody. I don't care if you believe in God or you don't believe in God. I'm not here to say that. For me, it's God. And it's basically, it's an orchestra. It is that voice that we all have, whether you believe in God or not. You have that voice. Some of us get very far away from it because we start to take the path that we want to take versus the path that we are supposed to take. So then the more you do what you want to do, the more that voice becomes muffled, to the point where that voice becomes silent, and people wonder why they become so lost in the world, because you have no direction, you have no guidance. You're only guiding yourself, and when you guide yourself, you are truly lost in life. And this isn't about God or anything else. This is just about, man, we are here for a reason. If you don't believe you're here for a purpose, you have lost the war. You have to believe that everyone here is for a purpose. And so Amen. For me, that voice has guided me to exactly where I'm at today. So what was your second question about that one?
I wanted to know how your relationship with that voice has changed. But just before that, to clarify, so you actually literally believe that voice is an external element that is communicating with you?
I know, and see, this was crazy about it, man. And until you've lived a life like I have, we all have a story. There's no reason why I should be where I'm at today. No reason. I literally might be, and this is honest to God's truth. I hate to say this. People say, "Oh, don't say this by yourself." I might be one of the biggest underdogs in the history of underdogs. And I'm not saying there's a lot of people who have no arms, no legs, stuff like that, who have cancer. I'm not talking about that realm. I'm talking about a human body form that I have, being able to do things. My mind was mush. It was literally mush. And I have to tell myself this, and I'm very misunderstood a lot, which is why I share my story. And if you listen to that voice and you're willing to put the armor on your mind every day and go to war with yourself, what comes out the other end is truly amazing. So I got a chance to live it and know what the voice is. A lot of people haven't experienced what I experienced, so they have a lot of doubt. And I might have doubt too if I didn't experience what's on the other side of suffering. That's the thing about it, man. A lot of us blame God or whatever for this kid has AIDS, my dad died, my mom died, I'm suffering. So, my priest or pastor stole money from the church, so it's all God's fault. Man, we are really missing the point of the test of life. We are missing that there has to be a trial ground. And I'm not trying to go there right now. I'm just telling you what I experienced through life. And if I saw it any other way besides a trial ground, I would be a fat, dumb, insecure guy at 43 years old, having never gotten to the other side of this fucked up journey of life that we all experience. We have to turn all these negatives into fuel for positives, and that's what the journey is. That's what it's all about, finding the flip side of all the negative. So now with the voice I have in my head, I don't question it. I don't talk back to it. I just say, look, man, whatever. If my job is to suffer for the rest of my life, to show people what is possible, if my job is to be comfortable, if my job is to be a priest, a pastor, run hundreds of miles, go back in the military, work out until I'm dead, whatever the voice, be homeless, whatever the voice is telling me to do, man, but usually it's telling me you have to go into a place that is very uncomfortable to find comfort. So I just listen, man.
Is it possible God was talking through your father?
100%. 100%. I had to go back through my life.
That's deep.
And realize. So what made me get to where I'm at today is I had the woe is me mentality. And once again, man, I'm not trying to preach God on people right now, but this is what the conversation is. I had to go back and get answers. I had to go back and see why I was treated the way I was. But I had to have the courage to do that. And you have to not hate the people that did things bad to you. You have to understand the people that did things bad to you. You can't go back. My dad had a lot of demons that he didn't face. He didn't hate me. He didn't hate my mom. He hated himself. And I had to go back and study his path. What drove him to this point? So all my enemies and all my foes and everybody that I've come across in my life, I had to study them to understand where this shit came from. So then I understand I can forgive them. I can't live with this hate. I have to move on. So there's a big process in life that we don't want to deal with because we live on the surface. We love the surface of life. We don't want to go to the root cause of the fucking problems that we all have. And the root cause is usually when you were a kid. Why am I this piece of shit right now? It usually happened when you're 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and now you're 47 years old and you're wondering, why am I still jacked up? It probably happened to you when you were real young, but we don't want to go back in that stuff. We can't talk about it at parties. You want me on that wall.
You need me on that wall.
You need Goggins on your psychological wall kicking you in your ass, right?
Yeah, that's exactly how I did it, man. I turned back and I was like, okay, why? Let's examine exactly why these had to go down the way it did. And I was like, man, if every piece of life is a training ground, even right when you come in and you're born, right, just trying to survive, the first test you're thrown at is breathing. And then after that, it keeps kind of escalating up the path. And our children are the next version of us. So if your old man's whipping on you, he's beating on himself. He just, there's whatever reason's going on in there. And, if you once you realize that what's happening is like, all right, man, obviously there's something going on behind that. And that's the reason I'm taking it as hard as I am for some ridiculous stuff like a tire halfway into the street or misspelling a word, right? And that's the lesson and that's the test. And if you make it through that part, you've graduated that part of your training and you learn from it. You definitely don't have to push it down. Like I can never beat myself up. Like people always did that. I wouldn't do that to the next version of myself. Mm-hmm. I'd understand. And that's when you have the ability to take yourself back to the age, right? Always put yourself into the situation of that person, see what's going down and try and think about both sides of it. Always do that, man. And don't look at it as something that you have to take every single day. That moment lasted for that moment, so it's over. And you push past it. You made it through it. Why would you drag the feeling with it, right? Why? Because you think you're going to go back to it? Well, that's all right. We'll deal with it when we get there. But just keep going through it. And those tests are important. I mean, don't ever forget about them. They remind you how strong you are. And then as you progress through life, man, you make your own identity. And I like to say, man, never let anybody's perception of you become your